For those of you who don't know me, I'm Professor Amel. I'm the chair of the center, and I'm delighted to have my colleague from UC Santa Barbara here to speak with us today. Laila Sakr is an assistant professor, associate or assistant? Assistant. Wow, I thought I gave you not yet elevation. She's an assistant professor of film and media studies at UC Santa Barbara. She holds an MFA in digital arts and new media from the University of California, Santa Cruz, an MA in Arab Studies from Georgetown University, and a PhD in Media, Arts, and Practice from the University of Southern California. With this background, it's no surprise that Laila is well known as a digital media theorist, artist, and activist, working in media like computational art, live cinema, and data visualization. Notably, her work uses media analytics, visualization, and immersive storytelling techniques to map participation in virtual worlds and networked publics. Laila has shown her art and scholarship in solo and group exhibitions and performances at galleries and museums across the Americas, Europe, and the Middle East, and she's published extensively. Tonight she will share her work on the R-Shief media system, a project for archiving and analyzing content from social networking sites across and beyond the Middle East. We're very honored that Laila is here with us today. Please join me in welcoming her to the Center for Middle East.
Thank you for the generous introduction, and thank you all for being here and all the familiar faces. I feel like I'm in some ways back at home, in some ways back at the beginning of my scholarly quest in Northern California. Just to frame sort of the rules, I go by VJ Amel, which is a conceptual project of mine. VJ meaning VJ like DJ. Amel is mother of hope, and I actually have a daughter named Amel. So you are welcome to tweet. You are welcome to Instagram. You are welcome to get on your phones. I will not take offense. In fact, I would be happy for any sort of interactive response to my talk today. So the title of my talk, The R-Shief Media System Between Technology, Art, and Scholarship. In 2008, I engineered an ambitious multi-function media system, R-Shief, with the aim to attend to critical gaps in computational and textual analysis. In the next 30 to 40 minutes, I will identify these gaps. This real-time representation of social media technology became an engine whose data, tools, and logics evolved to archive and reflect the dynamic new consciousness and theory of digital uprising, as well as to enable and empower it in specific ways. R-Shief became a source to produce 3D games, generative art, remix video, data visualization, and live cinema. Rapidly, my research transformed into producing a real-time analytics media system that revealed how material bodies, right, shaped a virtual body politic in the context of global uprising, specifically the Arab uprisings. And it also served as a data house for 26 billion social media posts collected over 5 years and across several media platforms. The production and consumption of this digital archive reveal and challenge the boundaries and the friction between the art, scholarship, technology, or we could say art, politics, and technology as well. Addressing both the potential and the limitations of these archival and media practices provides a unique opportunity to reflect on the politics of knowledge production and Middle East studies. Let me go back. I conceived of R-Shief in 2008 in response to my experience working in publications and multimedia production at Georgetown University and a DC-based film company called Quilting Point Productions, and a media and arts collective called the DC Guerrilla Poetry Insurgency. I recognized at that time two emerging shifts or friction points on the scene that motivated me to build R-Shief. The first was a growing number of posts in Arabic by bloggers in the Arab world using the space as a site of information distribution and organization. The emergence of social media personas through the Arabic speaking world. In Gaza, we had Gaza Mom. She was tweeting on the Gaza war in 2008. She introduced me to Twitter. In Egypt, we had anti-torture blogs in Arabic. At the same time, there were prestigious academic institutions already beginning to analyze the blogosphere. In 2009, Harvard's Berkman Center for Information and Society published this groundbreaking article mapping the Arab blogosphere, politics, culture, and dissent, where they published these really sexy data visualizations. Here it is. However, nowhere in the article did they reference the blogs themselves. It seemed like they didn't actually read the blogs, and later I found out they didn't really analyze the blogs because they were in Arabic, I assume. But unfortunately, these true trends, one organized by activists and one by academics, seem to run parallel to each other rather than converging. So by providing both tools and analysis through R-Shief, my research works to fill the critical gap between academics and activists. This problem in scholarly making continues till today, and then recently there was an edited volume that came out, Media Evolution on the Eve of Arab Spring, and they republished this article. And to me, this brings into urgent questions in the field about standards. How is it okay that Berkman publishes an article on the Arab blogosphere? There's even the word culture in the subtitle, without reading a single primary source. Perhaps one reason they did not analyze the blogs is because they were in Arabic, which brings me to my second motivation for designing R-Shief. And this is the accessibility of Arabic fonts and this is the accessibility of fonts in Arabic for the web. There was a time, right before the Arab blogosphere developed, when we could not get the Arabic glyph encoded for web interfaces. This is around 2006, 7, 8. And so we could not get the interfaces to read from right to left. These basic limitations prevented quite a challenge from both technological and visual design perspectives, and it took a while to resolve. One problem was that the Arabic glyph appeared much smaller than the Roman glyph, and then so you have these bilingual websites that just were not even. It was very difficult to design Arabic legibly without having English looking dramatically large. And I always found that relationship ironic. It reminded me of the power of the English language had in the early years of the internet. Later, open source projects like Wikipedia and Drupal worked to change that. And here is an interesting friction point between technology and scholarship. As a graduate student at UC Santa Cruz, I built a prototype of the bilingual Arabic digital archive as my MFA project. And thus, from its inception, I situated R-Shief at the intersection of art, technology, and scholarship. That is when I first encountered and ultimately joined the network of Arab techies and activists in the region. Since 2008, providing revolutionary innovative software developments in Arabic language has been at the core of R-Shief's purpose. R-Shief offers one of the largest collections of Arabic tweets and hashtags on global uprisings, and particularly attention to Egypt. The production of R-Shief as an Arabic archive, in theory, should allow us to engage in social media in the actual language people speak. This disparity reveals a lack of engagement of access to the primary language. Very interesting, here you have a graph to give you a sense of Twitter and how much the data in Twitter is in Arabic and how much of these are in English. The blue represents Arabic content, the red represents English content. And here you have hashtag must, which means Egypt in Arabic, انتخابات الرئاسية, the presidential elections. This is the hashtag Tahrir, Jan 25, Egypt. Amr Suleimani, who was one of the presidential nominees, and Gaza, which is interesting. The only one that's not about Egypt has a lot of English content. It was in a very interesting email thread from the Arab Techies listserv in September 2012. Sami Ben Gharbiya, Slim Amamu, and Ala Abdel Fattah expressed grievances to the University of Toronto's Citizen Lab when they approached activists on the listserv for data for open and collaborative research. And they wrote, this is something that Ala wrote. It seems like there's a new field in academia that uses the newness of the internet as an excuse to get rid of guidelines, ethics, and traditions developed in the humanities. So we get results published without tools. Algorithms or data makes one wonder how any peer review is possible. Much of this would be mitigated if local academia was not ignored. Why seek stewards among practitioners and not engage with local universities and researchers? Sure, our brown universities are messed up, such as our brown lives here in the brown South, but I assure you that the difficulties in working with them are nothing compared to the difficulty of doing accurate research without their understanding and context. Again, here is another, this is Facebook now, a representation of how much content on Facebook is in Arabic versus English. That top line, horizontal line, are the Arabic users, and then we have Arabic, English, and German, and the English users. This is on content related to the Middle East. In this representation, go back to tell the story of R-Shief. So then I got involved with the Arab techies. In 2010, I went to Beirut. I met with them and I sort of realized how much more advanced they were with networking and with social media. And I started archiving the social media content. Before it was just about getting the Arabic content online, and I was just sort of picking one thing at a time. But in 2010, I started archiving social media feeds. And so that by January 2011, I already had a system in place to archive hashtags. And so I actually created this data visualization that became very well known. Whoops, sorry. I'm not very good at multitasking.
Hello and welcome to R-Shief's second info vid. This one.
Okay, you really don't need to hear me talk twice. So basically, sorry. So what you have here are, this is an example of what we did in 2011. Over the 18 days of the Egyptian Revolution, we were able to archive 800,000 tweets on the hashtag Jan25 in English. And we put them in this data visualization that I want to show you how this works. It's fantastic. It was, okay. So what you do is you have now, imagine 800,000 tweets. How do you read 800,000 tweets? Do you sit down and read them one at a time? Well, this interactive visualization is just a way to read. It pairs up phrases of Twitter, because keep in mind that Twitter is not necessarily sentence structure and paragraph structure. It's 140 characters. That is the structure of Twitter. So this goes in and is able to pair up two words that are connected. These are called collocates in the world of data science. Collocates are two words that often appear together. And so it's able to pair up collocates that are together through a variety of different pairings. In other words, word 1 and word 2 can be brought together through the word and, or through the possessive apostrophe s, or through, sorry, I'm going to keep, the video keeps going, or through the preposition of the. So, you know, people of the regime, or through the predicate is. So it was able to allow you to go in. So to go back to this, so basically you were able to read interesting different words, and you're able to move them around, and a few things popped up. One is that when it came to the verb is, what appeared was video is history. There it is. Video is history. And then so what you were able to do is every time those two words were together, if you sort of scrolled over the line that brought those two together, the actual tweets would read, and you'd find out there are 66 occurrences of video is history. And you can actually see the tweets, and you'll recognize whether they're retweets or not. Holding a demonstration, supported a dictator. This is a. So this is like a prepositional relation, direct object relationship. Hang an Egyptian, takes a turn, smoking a joint, right? So these are the things that people are tweeting about. This was happening in 2011. I was able to do this data visualization partly because of timing. I had started my doctorate degree, and I was in the Annenberg Innovation Lab in meetings with IBM, who were doing big data analysis at the very time that the people were protesting in Tahrir Square. And I literally went home, like the news was hitting us and we were in this meeting, and I looked at the guy next to me and I said, look, I have all these tweets. And he said, he showed me this, this interactive data visualization that was on their open source platform called Many Eyes. So this is a Many Eyes free tool by IBM. It's no longer quite, it doesn't work as well as everything's changed, but in 2011 it was working. And they were very excited to work with me, and it was very interesting to me that here I am using graphs, created by corporate IBM when I'm trying to when I'm here supporting the activists. It was a very awkward position to be in. When you're in the classroom and you're with these corporate people and you are wanting to be sort of on the ground. So the story continues. I'm in the Annenberg Innovation Lab. There we go. Video is history. And they're like, okay, we have this sentiment analysis tool. Sentiment analysis has become very interesting for research in social media because social media, unlike traditional media, allows for an emotional register. In fact, that's what makes it different, I think. People do emote. There is an emotional register, and that's how you communicate on social media. There's a lot of bad words, as my mother likes to say. So they wanted me to do the sentiment analysis, and I went in and I took a bunch of words in Arabic and said, okay, these are, we had to create a dictionary. So how does sentiment analysis work? Well, you have a dictionary of what's good and bad, what's positive and negative. And then you take your words and you throw it against the dictionary, and it does this calculation and lets you know how much of what your data set is positive or negative. So we really had this simple graph. The green represents positive tweets, the red represents negative tweets, the larger the pie, the more the tweets, etc. So, I took this tool, I was very excited, I took these graphs, I went to Cairo in July, and I sat down and was like, oh. So Murtada Mansour, who was the laughing stock of Cairo, got 100% positive sentiment analysis. How did that happen? Well, the tool was not able to detect sarcasm. So, I'm there in Cairo, and I'm like so excited to show them this, and everyone's laughing, and I don't understand why they're laughing, and then I realize that. So this is a very interesting, again, a friction point between the technology and the knowledge production. Needless to say, I left the lab after a tumultuous summer in 2011, and I'll get back to the details towards the end of my talk. But the global power institutions were interested in using our tools, and I went back to the local Arab techies in the region for direction. And in 2012, I wrote a grant in Arabic, which was a feat, to the Arab Digital Expression Foundation in Cairo to build an open source Arabic text analysis API for techies and activists. And by the time we built and launched the API in 2013, the counter-revolution had seized power in Egypt. We had lost several activists to imprisonment against the newly invented anti-protest laws, and in this case suffered the death of a leading activist in the open source movement and the founder of our granting institution, R-Shief. Similarly, in the open source movement, we lost Aaron Schwartz a few months before that. So R-Shief rapidly grew into a digital archive, to a complex media, from a digital archive to a complex media system, collecting and analyzing from social networking sites using innovative swarm computing. We harvested one of the largest Arabic language tweets, according to Science magazine. And R-Shief is a big data repository in terms of three things, all right? So what is big data? Big data is big when it is big in volume, velocity, and variety. I would note that big data is not notable due to size, but to its relationality to other data. So how can you actually organize this data? It's big when it's sort of this complex network of information. So we built this tool called Qala. Qala means castle in Arabic. I'm going to give you a quick little tour. It's how many people here are techies or do sort of database building or analysis? Okay, so I'll just say that it is a NoSQL database. Does anybody know what a MySQL database is? Basically, it is a table, right? Columns and rows. The NoSQL database is not that. It's about more like mapping out relationality among data. So we built this app. It's called an application stack. We're using CouchDB for the NoSQL database. We're using Elasticsearch for what's called a faceted search. We're using Rabbit to tie it all together, and then we're using a PHP framework. So this is highly technical, but just so you know. And then I'm going to give you a walkthrough. So I just yesterday was doing an interview about social media trends in the Middle East. And one of the things that we noticed is that Saudi Arabia, the hashtag El Saudiya in Arabic, is constantly eclipsing all other hashtags in our little archive. There we go. So here you have the volume. I really wonder how much of this data coming from Saudi Arabia or about Saudi Arabia is actually robotic and bot. And I mean, I meant to say bot as in B-O-U-G-H-T, but B-O-T. It's actually both. Why do I say that? Because look how even that is. Human beings are erratic. When human beings are tweeting, it's erratic. This is pretty even. That means there's a steadily, every day someone sits down at their job and then is paid to tweet about Saudi Arabia. The other reason why I say that is that we pull up the top links and the top images. It's slowly populating. And the top links are all these news reports from the Saudi government. It's like Saudi government propaganda. The other thing I was noticing yesterday was that throughout 2014 and 2015, the hashtag ISIS, the hashtag in Arabic, Dawla al-Islamiyya, the hashtag Daesh, which is ISIS in Arabic. These things were trending throughout the year, up and down, different ones. They're completely off the chart. I mean, they're not on the charts. So I was like, what's going on? So if you go to our system here, it works we have over 70 languages, ISIS. So if you start plugging in ISIS, you start putting in the words, there'll be a drop down, and you'll see all the different variations of the word ISIS in our system, which is very interesting in and of itself, because you can see how this is colloquial Arabic, colloquial English, how do people decide to frame it? So I went in there and I looked up ISIS. I'm like, what's going on with ISIS? Why are we not? And the top, now this is erratic. This is a little bit more normal to see a graph like this. And I went in and I saw what's the top link? And I clicked on the top link. Oh, it's changed. This was yesterday. Well, yesterday, it's like this propaganda, again, from the Saudis, just to talk about basically how the Shiite and how the Shiite and the Iranians are messing up. Actually, yesterday, see, this has changed already. Yesterday, the top link was about the explosion or the stampede during the Hajj, the pilgrimage. Huh?
I think this is one about Iran as well.
This is about Iran as well. Yeah. So it's like, why are the tweets on ISIS about Iran? Anyhow, so I'm going to give you let me show you just really simply. You're welcome to use the tool. I'm currently, it's going under a new renovation. I just started at UC Santa Barbara, and I have a lot of support there with the computer science department engineers and everybody. But if you're interested in doing some search, so there's that tool that shows you over time by hour, and it shows you the top links and the top images. Can somebody give me a hashtag that they're interested in looking at? Cubs. I'm going to use the Cubs because they're a baseball team in America, and they have nothing to do with the Middle East. So if you go, and I just did this for a good friend of mine. She was a big Cubs fan. It's a Chicago baseball team, apparently. And so you go in there and you put in, they were about to win, but They hadn't won in like 100 years, and I thought that was really important. So, so this is our search tool, and I told you earlier that we do a faceted search. What does that mean? It pulls up the actual tweets. So do you want to read the actual tweets? You can get the actual tweets. Now, it's organized currently by frequency of the word cups. So the first ones will be cups, 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 cups. But as you go down, you can go through them, and you can filter different ways. The other thing, and we're going to fix this on our next iteration, but for now, you can still flip through it. You just have to be patient and like you're going through a library stack. And then on the left side, you can see the number of posts by whom? The Chicago Cubs arena, somebody, Brooke and Brianna and Anita and Chris. But let's just, if you want to just look at what the Chicago Cubs arena have tweeted, you click on that and it filters it. Super cool. Let's just undo that. But it's also cool because it gives you the list. And then you have here, we're hoping we will be, the way we've built this system, you can actually collect for Instagram and Facebook and other things. And we're just on hold until we bring it to Santa Barbara to do that. But here you'd have various collections. I might also do collections, for example, on, Middle East film, American baseball, right? And so the collections can be thematic. And then you have here by language, and you can see English is the most. But what if I don't speak English? And I just want German or Spanish? Well, or I just want the English tweet. So you just click on that, and boom, you're just going to read the English. This is very, very helpful especially for Middle East content, for people who are not Arabic speakers, and they still want to read the content. And at least when you do that, all right, so you're only reading 5% of the tweets, but at least you know that. And you recognize that there is something else. And then what I find very interesting here at the bottom, you have the other words or the hashtags that appear in your data set. So what are other things that people are talking about? These are hashtags. Fly the W. Apparently W, it's a big hashtag. They fly flags with the W for Wrigley Field. And the Mets, because they beat them, etc. Baseball. So anyhow, so that's our search tool. You can go to our Qala's homepage. So here on the homepage, it says how to search. You click on that, and it gives you all of these different ways, these different ways to say, I want to search for this and that, or this or that, or I want an exact match or a fuzzy match, in case you're not quite sure what you're looking for. Keep in mind, we have 26 billion posts. How do we read? How do we do, again, back to my first point, how do we do computational and textual analysis of 26 billion? So it's going to take a little bit of work. I'll just quickly give you a little bit more of a tour. We have a trends widget that's not fully working. Instead, I'm doing the monthly trends until we get that working. You saw the real-time hashtag visualizer. You can compare hashtags. You can do a comparison of hashtags up to 5. We have our historical hashtag visualizer for data from 2010 to 2013. Again, we have a textual analysis, and this is very, very exciting. Since I'm here with Arabic speakers, I can just show this really quickly. We really do want to build out an Arabic smart engine. Or maybe not. Maybe these smartphones need to become stupid because it's all a little overdone. But we have smartphones that are smart because it understands English. But we don't have smartphones in Arabic. We don't have smart engines in Arabic yet. And this has to do with machine learning. It has to do with the computer being able to understand the various languages. So I started building what I want to continue doing, build an Arabic smart engine. And you have to start at the very root. What for the computer, words they're not words, they're called entities. So, each entity, what is the entity? So we have to create an Arabic entity extraction tool so that the computer knows what this set of glyphs that are tied together mean. And so if you go in there, and what we've done is you can fool around with this a little bit, but I'm just going to take thawra. Thawra is Arabic for revolution. Did I do that right? How do you Control V? Okay, let me try this one more time. And what's called a knowledge base. In other words, it's analyzing this against all of Wikipedia. Wikipedia is our knowledge base. So it goes in there and it gives you sort of the entity. Every time this word has appeared in Wikipedia and in what context. And this is the beginning of our entity extraction tool. In addition, we have this Instagram Geo Locator Api. It's very simple. We haven't really launched it yet, but people are asking me about Instagram. You go onto the map, put your finger around a geographic location, it pulls you all of the images that people have Instagram. Now, why do we do that with Instagram and not Twitter? Because Instagram, the way that it's designed, people tend to just sort of give their geographic location. It's just automatic. You have to sort of opt out. But with Twitter, you have to opt in to get your geolocation mapped. And so only about 1% of people on Twitter actually allow for their geolocation to be mapped. So these are some of our tools. If you go to our archive, you can also find the index of all the hashtags that we've collected and a little bit of an index and explanation of the hashtags. To go back to this, I told you earlier that I was working at the Innovation Lab, and things got sort of messy. While these quantitative tools of the here and now are considered computationally innovative, they are like subordinate clauses that do not stand on their own when studying cultural phenomena, such as protest movements or uprising or other social, political, and linguistic practices. So through a multimodal dissertation called From Archive to Analytics, the R-Shief Media System and the Stories It Tells, I have situated this technology alongside historical and theoretical contexts through a critical art practice of live video performance, visual art, digital art, network analysis, and written text. Libya. So to see the double edge of technology, to understand how the iterative design process, a procedural one, is at work in reproduction of culture, this is the technological imagination. Technology is on one hand reiterating the past, on the other hand it is innovating a new assemblage. Again, in these difficult friction points, the double edge of technology where I believe new knowledge is experienced or scholarship is sort of created. And this brings me to the core of the challenges I have faced in building this revolutionary project. It has exposed me to the disturbing power of these technologies demonstrated by how people are willing to submit to torture and jail, to fight to make these technologies public, yet are continued to be surveilled and scrutinized and imprisoned. Students of Middle East studies must learn the dangers and possibilities of the relevance of both the surveillance state as well as creative tech, as well as a creative and tech generation of bold change makers. I mentioned earlier that 2011 was a tough summer. That summer I was also invited by the US State Department to talk about my social media analytics to a public made up of US intelligence communities, state, Congress, and US Foreign Service officers. And what ensued was quite interesting. A month after I had visited Washington, many US government officials had signed up for R-Shief's SMS. I had this like text messaging sort of mailing list. And in August, I received a text message from a colleague in Cairo telling me that the rebels have overtaken Zawiya, which is a small town outside the capital, Tripoli, in Libya. And they said, tell me what your tweets are telling you. And he wanted to know, what their tweets were saying. So I used some of these tools, older versions of them actually, and I identified that there was a pattern that was emerging now, that had emerged on Zawiya, the small town that was overtaken, was the same pattern was happening, but on the capital. So I noticed the same curve, the same velocity, and the same words appearing exactly the same, but this time in regards to Tripoli. And so I sort of did this quick math and I said, all right, so Tripoli is going to go down in 18 to 36 hours. I tweeted it, I texted it to everybody who was our mailing list, and it happened to be that all these people I had just met a month ago got their text messages. A couple hours later, I got a phone call from Jeff B. We don't know who he is. He works in the intelligence community, and he wanted to verify, and I explained what I did. And that message made it to, this was a Saturday, it was on a Saturday. The message made it to Obama's weekend briefings. So that was a little bit of a, it was a shocking moment. Yeah, so as it turns out, I was off by 6 hours, and later the Assistant Secretary of State, Rose Gottmidler, lauded me for this in an address she made here, Stanford. Sorry. So so it's if you look up like public addresses by this Assistant Secretary of State, my name is up there. And I don't know how that made me feel. Here I am, the activists whom I had begun the project with were being imprisoned. They were under surveillance. I'm getting calls saying, Laila, take your tweets down by my name. And then the US State Department was not my intended public audience. How did I end up on the media page of the US State Department? The project began at the intersection of artists and techies imagining a new world. It then archived various communities of knowledge producers as they organized solidarity networks on national, regional, and international levels. The possibilities seemed endless. But one of these possibilities was that the states would be just as invested and interested in the potential for this bid depository. So let's shift it. Similar to the nonlinear narrative form of the NoSQL database, right? We've gone from the page to tables and rows and columns, and now we're at the NoSQL mapping out of, sort of that first interactive visualization I showed you on Jan 25, where you could just move things around. Similarly to that narrative form, interactive narratives are also mapped relationally within larger systems and orders. In the context of global uprising and using the moniker VJ Amel, I extended the archive to create 3D games, generative art, remix video, data visualization, and so on and so forth. These media productions aim to build worlds in which the audience co-authors stories by extending networked narratives onto cinematic screens. These interactive experiences also demonstrate how a database narrative, a database narrative. Who's heard of database narratives? Raise your hand. So fascinating. Okay. There's lots of literature on it. It's really interesting. How a database narrative might express meaning through recombinant and indexical instantiations. Do you know what I mean by when I say that? Okay. Indexical instantiations. Indexed instances over and over and over again. When you have digital content, you can do series of things. You can do them over and 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 over again. It is a different narrative form to have these recombinant, patterns of iterative design patterns. This is a new form of actually telling story, in fact. In film production in Hollywood, Alex McDowell uses, point to Josh, Alex McDowell is using what he's calling world building, a design method for film production that's built around the idea of iterative design process, where you design and you redesign and redesign. You're not writing a script to screen. It's design to narrative. Here's a little blip I want to show you. This is something I did in 2010. Oh, sound.
Often those who know what VJ is don't understand the Amel part, and vice versa. A VJ is a performance artist who creates moving visual art, often in video on large displays, screens, or projections. Amel is Arabic for mother of hope. It's pretty common for Arabic speakers to name themselves or others as mother of, or father of, Abu. Put it all together, you have VJ Amel. Welcome to our cyber consciousness, where freedom comes with a price.
Imagine Middle Eastern landscapes.
The world is like ours, a place of much movement, pieces, network.
Why do the soldiers who commit atrocities?
Sorry, I'm trying to get you to this point.
There's a new conversation going on in the Middle East, yo. Catch on. A new social fabric, destabilized by wars, set in movement, transgressing worlds, and a social practice of media, migration, and imagination.
Okay. Another piece I did, just trying to show you different ways. That was more of a remix video and my sort of beginning thinking through the role of media and the Middle East. This here is built, I did this using processing, so it's done through coding. Again, it's not like cut and pasting the words. And this is the representation of the same body of tweets that you saw on January 25. Here, let me just before I finish it. It was really exciting. This was when Mubarak actually resigned after the 18 days. I took the 800,000 tweets and I did this, what's called a hash map. It's very emotive and poetic, and it's using, the larger the tweet, the words, the more frequently they appeared. I'll play this one for you guys. And you could feel sort of the anticipation. This was sort of the feeling that we were feeling when we were on social media and you're reading, you're hearing that the revolution actually worked. That the protest worked. Mubarak resigned at the time. So we thought. So we thought. But this is yet another way to read through or to express sort of, this is my own interpretation. It's my interpretation of experiencing the world of tweets that I experienced. So it's my database narrative storytelling. As opposed to sort of sentence structure. It's just built on the relationship between the data. And the music is meant to be harsh and digital. So some of the words in Arabic, it's a salat, means internet. It's saura, that's revolution. Help me here. Al-karama, it means dignity. And people say that the revolution in Egypt was about dignity, first and foremost. Anybody else? Do you see what other, what's that? Oh. And then the words don't mean anything anymore. And then you want to get into them. Right. Okay, I'm just going to show you a couple more. And then there's this one. So this is where I was telling you a little bit about Syria and Egypt. So I had started by collecting a lot of stuff on Syria because the Annenberg Innovation Lab wanted me to, and it was very interesting. I stopped because Syria, well, there's a lot of reasons why I stopped really. I still collect the data, I just don't do my own interpretation of it because I feel like I need a lot more help. I don't know Syria as well, I don't know Syrian dialect, and I think there's a lot more research that needs to be done. But what you have here at the top there, what's called a Getty Graph, or it's called a network visualization. Getty is the name of the software. And this is when we talked about, graphing relationships between the data. So there's points, and then there's lines between points. That's what you have. The green represents the Arabic tweets, the blue represents the English tweets, the red the French. And you can see that the people the English-speaking world and the Arabic-speaking world are separate worlds. So I, at some point, I created Tweet World. I think I was going nuts with my project. And this was sort of later in 2012. And that is about 500,000 tweets on the hashtag Syria. So I created this 3D game. It was meant to be a game. but I'm not really a game designer, so it ended up being sort of like an immersive experience. I built it in Unity, and I took that 3D thing. I took that 2D. You see that became 3D. So it's that Getty Graph. I took it and I wanted to enter it because it's so rich. So the idea, I created this thing, and so you become this little avatar, and you go in your world you go into tweet world, and the tweets are at the top of these mountains, and your goal is to get into, to immerse your body. The need to bring the body into this. Our bodies are political. Black bodies, purple bodies, blue bodies, all of that makes a difference as to how you are surveilled, how you are analyzed. There's a great book by Simone Brown called Dark Matters about digital blackness. So this is kind of how I was feeling at the time, just lost in tweet world. And so these are all short little clips I made for you guys. And then we have, these are some more of the data visualizations that I've done. Up there are a bunch of images created into a mosaic. On the if you follow specifically the Egyptian revolutionary experience, we will now say that we're in a moment of counter-revolution, or is the revolution completely over? I don't know. I mean, these are questions that are unanswerable right now. But there's been a series of events like anything, and this was the Abbasiyya riots when the Egyptian military were using U.S. military old gas cans. They were old. They were outdated to the people. What am I trying to say? Anyhow, so I took this picture, and it has like 100,000 pictures inside the picture, and that became a well-known image. And I did some live cinema. And I went to Egypt, and I'd actually... Here. So this was at the Arab Digital Expression Foundation with a bunch of local activists in Cairo in 2015. And I mentioned earlier that Ali Shad had passed away. He was the voice you hear here. He was my colleague. This was done in February, and he passed away later in December, same year. And this was an interesting experience. They put together bed sheets, and it took like 30 people to put them up, and we didn't have a formal place to actually do it, but it was highly successful.
فضلته قاعدين كده في الاغلب هيطلع ان احنا كنا مجهزينه بالظبط ونبقى فاتحين كمان. انما الهدف مش كده على الاطلاق، الهدف انه انتوا تتفاعلوا مع ده فيتغير بتفاعلكم. ممكن يكون بالتويت. احنا في هاشتاج اوبن ايجيبت اظن. هاشتاج اوبن ايجيبت اللي هيتويت هتستخدم التويتات بتاعته ليلى.
And those are the actual tweets that people were tweeting while we were having this experience. And that is the, did anybody know what this incident is? Huh? Maspiro. So it's, let's just, these were great times. And the world has completely changed since then. And I'm for the sake of time, I really want to get to questions. And I just want to say, there's a lot more to talk about. We're now doing sentiment analysis, and I'm looking at the garbage crisis in Lebanon, and we're coming up with new, interesting ways to look at the data. But I'll just leave you, I just want to say that right now we're at sort of this critical juncture. It's been a couple years since this work that you've seen, and I've done this sort of work. And I've stopped because of the surveillance state in Egypt, and not just the surveillance, the state. And I don't, the freedom of expression is just under question. I don't really know what the logic of the state is today. I don't know what kind of logic. I don't know if there is a logic that is being followed. And there's a concern about continuing to archive this social media content. And how can this, again, help re-foster the imagination and re-inspire imagination and the technological imagination? How can these tools work for the people again? Or are we at a time now where the Saudi government propaganda has taken over all of the hashtags and has sort of, eclipsed social media trends on the Middle East? I don't have answers. I have a lot of questions. My work's moving into the idea of bodies and the virtual body politic. The idea that, a girl in Palestine can hold up this picture about Ferguson and say, "From Ferguson with love from Palestine." This became like the third most tweeted image among tweets on Ferguson. So I'll just leave you with that sort of question. What happens to the body today? Thank you. I want to answer some questions, and maybe you can help, maybe offer me some advice, given this current state today. And a lot of the people I was working with, a lot of the activists are going in and out of jail. And Syria is another world.
Yes, my question may be trivial, but I was so intrigued by that. You stink, or what?
Yes.
And is that part of this emotional analysis that you're doing? And does it remain at that, or is there something more interesting about it to say?
Okay, sure.
Okay, so similarly, it's interesting, there's hashtags for countries tend to be the most frequently used because it identifies a place. But what we are finding among hashtags and Twitter is that people are using hashtags for messaging a particular position. And Black Lives Matter is a very good example of that. That is a hashtag that positions a particular political position. Whereas the hashtag Ferguson refers to the place of the event. It doesn't hold the meaning that Black Lives Matter does. Similarly, in Lebanon, there is a garbage crisis right now. The garbage has not been collected for many, many months, and they had rain, and there was just garbage just going up and down the streets, and it could be serious. A lot of medical, disease issues come up. It's been going on and on. So the people have gone into the streets and have protested it, and they have used this hashtag "You Stink." In Arabic, it's "talat rahetkum." "Talat rahetkum," and there's a hashtag "talat rahetkum." And it means your stink has come out. I don't know how to, your smelliness has come out, and it's a double entendre meant towards the government, saying you guys stink, and now the whole country stinks of garbage, having a serious garbage crisis. But it's interesting to me how these tend to be more fleeting than the hashtag like Lebanon, and it makes you wonder. So is this a successful? You stink is a hashtag that's actually continued to trend more than the hashtag on Lebanon. So is it just because of a lack of a national, Lebanon is a particular case, and one would say that there's not as much of a national agenda. There's a lot of arguments that one could make about Lebanon specifically, but you could also say that the protest movement around You Stink is successful, just like the Black Lives Movement is a successful one. The hashtag shows. For example, in France, Charlie Hebdo. The hashtag Charlie Hebdo, it stayed trending for a long time. But the hashtag Je suis Charlie, right? That went skyrocketing and then it stopped, the trend died very fast. So that the political stance behind Je suis Charlie is different from just using the name of the event. So I think that these, how groups use hashtags is very interesting and it's worth analyzing. So what I've done here is I've taken the #UseStink hashtag, and you can see that the green represents positive tweets, the red represents negative tweets, and you can tell that they're happy about the protest. So the big day was the day of protest, and they got 60.66% positive tweets. But they're not happy about the Lebanese regime. We're definitely not happy about the trash crisis. It's got 98% negative tweets. So.
I can't imagine what the 2% is.
Yeah, what's the 2% of the trash crisis?
Yeah, I don't know what the 2 is. 2 trash crisis.
The Lebanese.
2. It's probably a like shorthand for TO, I think. That's my guess. Yeah.
I was really interested in when you spoke about the failure of new technologies to even recognize Arabic script, and I read a beautiful thing last year, well, also sad, about by someone who was talking about the Nastaliq script and how it was basically being disappeared or used, especially with Urdu, because no operating systems supported. And actually, I think as a result of that article, there have been some kind of modest strides made toward changing that. But I'm wondering, it's just interesting to me how even a lot of the tweets in Arabic are still using English hashtags. And I wonder, do you see that what the tools that are available are like shaping the way that people express themselves to begin with? I mean,
yes, most definitely. But there's also work to be involved. So to go back to Arabic, in 2007, 2008, how I met the Arabic techies was through Drupal. Drupal is a content management system, much like WordPress. It allows you to make websites, and it's open source. So you had, there was an Arab techie team. Ala Abdel Fattah was there. That's how he met Salim Amamu. That's how they all met. And these guys later became the activists, but they were building tools. They built the actual code that enabled the Arabic to work, right? They're working together. It was a group of, if you go onto Drupal, I have it on another slide somewhere. You can look up Drupal Arabic team and you'll find that there are hundreds and hundreds of contributors. And they actually built a network of Arab techies. And that's how Arabic got to be used online because of these people who actually built it. But Arabic is encoded in UTF-8. English is in ASCII, and Japanese and Chinese also use different coding languages. So there's a lot of steps involved. It's like, on the one hand, which encoding system are you going to use? And then on the other hand, how do other platforms use that encoding system? Like, how does WordPress or Facebook or Twitter? Facebook started in 2004, and then Twitter in 2006. Facebook, you started using Arabic much earlier than Twitter used Arabic hashtags. Facebook was employing Arabic as early as 2009, and that's one of the reasons why Facebook was involved in these revolutionary moments, was because it was legible in Arabic. And the hashtags in Arabic didn't become, we were so excited when we were able to start collecting hashtags in Arabic. It was in March in 2012. It was March 2012.
I remember very well.
Is there anybody on the ground over there that's using your
I think so.
visualization thing still, or were you your tool? Like, are they using your analysis in their own? Any of the activists or people or folks that you were working with?
Researchers are. We've now moved into scholarship. And this is where, and to be honest, that's not a reflection of the tool as much as it's a reflection of where is the revolutionary moment today, and it has nothing to do with the technology. It has everything to do with the regime and the politics, and that's why I think it has to come back to, we have to start asking ourselves questions about the security state, and how the security state, how the states in the Middle East are. We are now, these are political states that are police states, they're military states. They are ruled by the military and the police. They are no longer, what's the word? It's not, we're in a post-neoliberal era. Gosh, I'm forgetting the term, but the state is less corporatized and more militarized. And so therefore, the way bodies, the citizens are no longer citizens who are talking to a state. They are bodies that the military is controlling. And so these bodies, as bodies, are political. And I keep saying that black bodies and brown bodies and purple bodies and queer bodies are queer bodies is a very good example of how to look at how is the state dealing with citizens in the Middle East today. Just look at how queer populations are moving through the state, or not, or what's happening. So it's no longer a rentier state. Sorry, we are post-rentier state, and we are now moving into a militarized, securitized, global militarized police state, and it's happening globally. We're having the same issues here in this country around the police, with how the police are treating its citizens in various bodies, depending on if you're a big fat body, like or a skinny body, or a purple body. I keep talking about purple bodies. I don't know why. But the point of the matter is that I think it's absurd. That's why. So I'm just saying purple bodies, because there's this great book, I'm just finished reading it, called Dark Matters by Simone Brown. I highly recommend it if this is something that matters to you. And she talks about digital blackness and how the black body is measured and surveilled and looked at differently than other bodies. So I feel like today because the regimes have shifted, the politics have shifted, therefore the activists have to shift. And technology is just, it's just media. But how can we, employ a new technological imagination to go forward? That's where that's where I'm working. Yeah.
How adaptable, how tech savvy have these militarized regimes become? Because it seems to me, that the fact that they're relying on these very classical militarized techniques shows a lack of technological sophistication or lack of understanding of these.
They're catching up really fast. They were really, really, really out of it. Like a few years ago, I was like, there's no way Sisi's going to ever be able to do this. But the last 2 years, they've invested in this. They've put a lot of money and a lot of effort. Qatar, one of the largest, most powerful computing research institute is in Qatar. It's called the Qatar Computing Research Institute or something like that, Qatar Research Computing Institute. All those words are in there in some order. And they have a lot of money and they're doing a lot of work. I know that the Saudis definitely are. It's covert though. It's just not open source. It's just not the same as an open source. What I like to what I feel like I'm a part of, and where my research and my scholarship is going is in the Arabic, the open source movement, not just Arabic, but just the open source movement, and to think about how can we just use open source technologies. As soon as these things become closed and covert, I don't know. But I do think, my analysis I tried to give you on Saudi Arabia is my way of saying I think they've now mastered the platforms. It's been a couple years. They figured it out. It's not rocket science. Yes, go ahead.
I'm just wondering, with new programs like Snapchat.
Yes.
How do you work with videos?
Oh yeah. So far we've only collected links. We haven't got into it yet. Lev Manovich, I can't believe I'm mentioning Lev Manovich. He has, there is work that's being done on video analytics, and I want to move in that direction, but we haven't done that because of just pure power. It takes a particular computational power that we haven't been able to do. But now that R-Shief is moving to UC Santa Barbara, talk to me in a year. But we are collecting Instagram and Facebook, Snapchat and Yik Yak in various locations, and YouTube. So YouTube, we have a few YouTube channels, as well as certain websites, certain RSS feeds. So I'm just collecting them now. I'm not analyzing them, to answer your question.
Yeah.
So 2 questions, sort of going back a minute. First, just with respect to the surveillance and police state piece, to what extent do you feel like the impunity with which the American intelligence agencies were able to escape, notwithstanding the Snowden leaks, created political space in the Arab states to replicate those abuses? And then second, with respect to the predictive analytics, to what extent could those be applied to social movements domestically in ways that could be productive?
That's 2 good questions. I do think that what we're looking at when we're looking at the surveillance state and the issue, what the Snowden phenomena, I don't know what to call it, definitely had a global impact. And a lot of this is globally impacted. I think I'm calling the Arab uprisings now global uprisings. They're definitely related. They're definitely impacting each other because they're learning from each other how to use the same system, right? And you saw the timing. I mean, it really, like the social media surveillance and social media by the state, and let's just say Egypt specifically, started in they wrote papers, they wrote articles in the journal, in the newspapers in Egypt that they were going to start, monitoring Facebook and Twitter right when Ed Snowden was being attacked by the U.S. government. So I think that they're completely hand in hand, and they are enabling. And I do think, to the same extent, they do share resources. In fact, when I said that the Qataris are, like one of the leading computational research centers are in Qatar, and I'm sure that they are working in tandem with other governments. It's not just for the Qataris. That just happens to be where the money is. But if you look historically, you can just see the timeline, and you can see that there was an impact. There was a correlation. Now, I resist saying predictive analysis, the whole thing with Libya. It's really not predictive analysis, it's just real-time analytics. It was not really the future, it was the moment, more so. And I think that if there is a way for us to get rid of the surveillance aspect of it, I don't know how, but like technologically, if there's a way that we could sort of covert, again, the data, then it is a fantastic, these real-time analytics are a fantastic way of organizing. It's a great way to organize people on the ground, grassroots organizing. Because if people were plugged in, it's kind of like Grindr, the Grindr app? I'm sorry to use it, but it's true. It's like okay, I'm on my app. I mean, activists could have a Grindr app, meet up with other activists in your nearby vicinity, but it's sort of covert, right? Grindr's got a covert aspect to it. I really do think that there's a correlation, by the way, to queer theory. I think queer theory has an opening, has a way, I haven't quite figured it out yet, but I think that queer theory has a perspective to lend to this issue. And particularly, I'll mention my colleague, Paul Ammar, who wrote a book called Security Archipelago, where he's looking at Brazil and Egypt and the surveillance state and queer communities in these countries and how they operate. And then I think that there is a way that, because there's this need to be covert, yet wanting to come together, and they have figured out ways. So I think that there are ways, but we have to first deal and recognize our powerlessness in the face of these huge states. To think that we're like, I'm revolutionary, I'm going to overthrow the government, we have to sort of I think, be a bit more modest and to return to each other. I think that we need to go back to what activists do, which is solidarity building, community building, network building, and we've done it. We've planted the seeds. Like there are communities now that know each other. And it is through the relationality of the data, the relationality of the people, it is through the ability for people to network and get to know each other where we can find global change. I really think that that's sort of the answer, but I hope I answered your question. Very good questions, thank you. Yeah.
I've been thinking for a while that the more control the surveillance people have, the less they know about us. Because they're already trying to create things that don't match us, and they have very little insight into how humans behave. Because the more the control they have, the more they're making things happen in ways that are often pretty awful.
I agree with you. I agree with you. I agree with I was talking to some psychologist or something. Human behavior is unpredictable. It is the erratic is what is human. Erratic unpredictability. That's what it means to be human. And the desire for these sort of social analytics about, like, I want to have an understanding of how people are online through this quantifiable method is just not enough. And that's why I said earlier, at some point, my approach to this is not just through quantifying data, but I think that you have to situate this within a larger historical narrative. It's why I do my various narratives. It's why I write the way I write. My work is based in the humanities. Not to say there's nothing wrong with the social sciences, but as a humanities-based researcher, my interest is rhetorical about the human condition and less so about, trying to look at social behaviors and sort of. I agree with you. But I don't know that everybody, but others think that they can know something, and I don't think that it's knowable. I believe, there's the truth. Is it an apple or is it an onion, right? So some people out there believe that you eat your apple and then there's a core. That's your truth. Well, I think of truth more like an onion. You just keep peeling layers out and there's nothing in the middle. And it makes you cry. I love that. I love that. And apples are sweet, and you think it's all sweet. And I go on with my little metaphor. Feel free to take it. It's actually my mother's metaphor. My mom taught me that. Yeah.
I'm more interested in the Instagram platform and how it's different than on Instagram just clicking on a place tag.
What do you mean? Sorry.
Like on Instagram, if something says this was taken here, and then you click on it, and then it shows all the photos that was taken there.
The difference is you can actually just download them. It's just a tool to download the pictures, and then you can go and do more analysis. I do want to get into some visual analysis of looking at visual analysis into form and color and technique and perspective and depth and that kind of stuff. So you can actually download it and then do stuff with it. That's basically it for now. And if it's an open source API, you can go there, you can click it, you can download the tool. But we don't support it because it's just sort of an extra, it's an extra thing. We're highly into Twitter right now because it's easier. Yeah.
Fantastic talk. I was wondering, you talked about the CIA, or someone from the government contacting you. Do you ever have any fears that this data could be used by other agencies in the Middle East, perhaps?
Oh, yeah. Well, I don't have that fear. I mean, it's been back and forth. I don't think that it's that big. I don't think that I'm that big. I think that there are other entities that are bigger and they could. But I believe in open. I believe in open source. I believe in public data, and I will not change. I'm not going to go hide it. I'm not going to go into hiding. I just won't do it by principle. My principle was to create an open source, public platform by the people, for the people. That was what I wanted to do, and I will stick by that. And I'm following the rules. And I have had people tell me, I'm in danger, please remove this stuff, and I will do that out of someone's request. There's 26 billion posts here. There's so much data. And Twitter has more. And if people really, really want to, they'll go to the Firehose, they'll go to GNIP, there's plenty of other sources now. I mean, this tool is I think it's small in comparison to what other people have done. That's my personal opinion. But I won't change I won't be bullied. Yeah.
I just realized I didn't quite understand the way that the tool works. So do you say that there's just 26 billion posts? Are they all, do they get updated, or do you just have 26 billion that you can search?
Good question. We have, I can't remember the numbers. So we have a historical data set from 2010 to 2013. Why did it stop in 2013? Because that is when Twitter shut its API and changed things, so we had to build a whole new system. That stuff is historical. We have it. It's all indexed. It's all clear, and you can get into it. The new stuff is just much more of it because we're now using that Qala system I told you about, and I told you about the application stack. It's much more robust. We have the capacity of pulling in up to 50 million a day, but we don't because we don't have the resources to save them. And so we have, from 2013 till today, we have stuff stored, but it's off the system. It's actually on Amazon. They're just sort of tucked away. They're not accessible. What is accessible is only the last 30 days. That's all that I can make publicly accessible. The rest I'm saving to bring it back into the publicly accessible just when I have enough resources. So there's different there's collecting, so you can collect, like the Library of Congress has collected a lot. But yeah, it's just sitting there, and there's nothing you can do with it unless you make it accessible and processed. So I don't have the capacity to both collect and process. So we only process the last 30 days of data.
So this feels like a dumb question, but I'm just curious, so when the things that you have, for example, that are stored by Amazon, like, what do they look like? Like, if you were collecting a tweet, is it like in basically just text-based in a spreadsheet?
Yeah, it's a good question. So what they look like when you download them, it's actually, again, columns and rows. Each row represents a tweet, and there are many, many columns. So one will be the tweet ID number, has an ID number. The other is, okay, I can't remember the order of things, but there's a tweet ID number. So each tweet has its own number, a unique number. And that's the most important one, actually. Then there's a from user. Sometimes there's a to user, because sometimes you're replying. Sometimes there is a language. At the time, they weren't doing language recognition. They were only giving you the language of the user, and that doesn't work for multilingual people because sometimes you're using different languages. But it gives you the language of the tweet itself, the geolocation by latitude and longitude if you have the authorization, the tweet itself. I'm forgetting what else. But so anyhow, so there's a bunch of columns that give you all this data about your tweet, and each row is a tweet. Yeah, I'm available on Twitter. I'm also available at UCSB Department of Film and Media Studies. You can find me there. Yeah.
So I'm an educator and I'm in the School of Education here, and I'm really interested in kind of designing curriculum for high school students to learn about computer science in the context of activism. How difficult do you think it would be to take maybe a simplified version of some of the computer science that went into this? Is it accessible, you think, to kind of high school students who's fresh into computer science, or does it take like a PhD in computer science, or what's the level of sophistication of the? You can make it. So that requires really good pedagogical skills. The harder it's the younger the students, the harder it is to teach, and it's doable. I will not say it's not doable. Of course, it's doable. In fact, one of the things that I've been asked to do in my new job is to come up with teaching modules around these issues. Next quarter, I'm teaching a class on digital activism and new media in the Middle East for undergraduates. That's a class, so I can share with you my syllabus. I'd be happy to work with you on that. High school students a little bit, but I can share with you what I'm doing for undergraduates, if that helps. Cool. Yeah, just reach out. Okay. Any more questions?
Whoopee.
All right. Well, thank you guys very much. Thank you.